be looking at how we actually declare variables. We'll often use variables for holding temporary data or iterating through cells and things like that, and how we actually perform conversions between different data types. Most notably, integers or numbers and strings that we'll be going back and forth to on a regular basis. Now, it can be very helpful for us to create some variables. Variables are things that we can store data in, do some computations, do some comparisons, do some intermediate steps before writing things out to spreadsheets again, to actually cells. There's a few types of variables that are helpful for us. Integers, longs, which are essentially long integers that use 4 bytes instead of 2 bytes. Doubles, which allow us to store floating point numbers with decimal places. And finally, strings. The way we define these is basically the same for each of them. So we say dim. This tells us that we're going to define an integer or define a variable. We'll give it a name. So num1 we say as, and then the data type. And we say integer. If we want to declare a long integer, we say num2. That's the name we're going to give it as a long. Dim num3 as a double, and dim is string1 as string. And then we can write some things into each of those. So num1 will store the value 1, 2, 3, 4. Num2 will store the value 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can store larger numbers as well that we can't store in our normal integer because it wouldn't fit. Num3 will store something with a decimal point, and our string will store a string. And then we'll write them out to cells so we can see them. So we'll just write them in consecutive rows. We'll hit go and see what we get. So 1, 2, 3, 4, we get that larger number, and then we see our string. Now if we tried to write a non-integer number in the integer, tried to put some decimal places in there, we'll see what we get. Everything after the 1, 2, 3, 4, everything after the decimal point is lost. If we try and put a number that's too big in there, we'll see what we get. We get an overflow error, so it's because we can't store a number that large in our normal integer. One other thing that can be useful for us at times, rather than writing things out to files all the time to see them and see what's going on, is we can use message boxes. So we basically say MSG box, message box, and we write what we want to write. So we can write a message there, and essentially when we run it, when it gets up to that line, it'll come with a little message box saying what we want to write. Now we can very easily write one of our variables in there, for example num1. Now if what we're writing there is strings, what we can say is we can join a few different strings together. For example, we can say string1, we say plus, we put a few spaces, and we'll put in something else there, and that will actually join them together and create a new string and display that new string, which is a longer string compared to the previous one. If we did it with, if we put an integer in there, it won't do it because it recognizes that they're different types, and so it will say a type mismatch. One way we can do it if we want to is we convert the integer to a string, and we use the cstr command, and we specify num1, and that will convert our integer there to a string. We might put a little space in there so that we can see that we've converted it, and now we've got a string, a string, and a string. We hit go, and we can see that they've been joined together, and we have those strings being output there.